Hey everybody, Dan here for Comic Frontline, and we are not doing an indie haul, we are doing an indie spotlight, and what we are going to be focusing on this one is Junction City Comics. Okay, basically I have three titles from Junction City Comics. Here we got the All New Union, that's number one. Second title we have, trying to keep these all in order for you, The Fancy Men. Hold it a little further back so you can see the full cover there. Those are the Fancy Men. And then our final title is going to be Mr. Disaster. Uh, Basically, the Union and the Fancy Men debuted, I believe, in 2014. Mr. Disaster was a 2017 debut. So I am going to take these in the order they debuted rather than just purely release dates, because the Union actually had 4 issues, as I said. Fancy Men with 2, Mr. Disasters with 1. I don't know if I pulled back enough for you to see the full team there of the Union. Okay. So basically, we have Galvanic, or Galvanic. He's a dude on the bottom there. He's a metallic. Let's see. Trying to get the names here. In the purple, the female on the right side of the screen there, that's Dreamscape. She had sort of magical abilities. I'm assuming, well, actually there was descriptions in there, so let me get to that in a second. But the gentleman in the yellow is Feather. The woman in the blue is Atomic X. And there's a character actually in the background, which I didn't realize the first time I've picked it up. But then you'll see him become part of the team. And that is, he's simply known as D. So D is in David, the letter D. So that is the team. Actually, they had a description of them. Let's see. The All New Union's first outing didn't go exactly as expected. Well, this is like the prelude in the second issue, kind of giving you the story so far. But it describes that metahumans hadn't been seen in over 14 years, and they were battling a giant cloud monster in the middle of a small city. That was issue 1 here. And then we have the villain, Dr. Thompson, and he has a time cannon, and well, basically the time cannon, he does produce a threat that I don't want to spoil for people, but I did think it was a creative threat that he unleashed upon the heroes. So I did think the story was rather creative in that it did give us a large-scale problem. Okay, a team of heroes usually needs a large-scale problem if they're somewhat powerful, and you need something beyond what any one hero can handle, which is actually the of course purpose of forming a super team, is that you're in some type of dilemma that one character can't really handle. So here's the cover to issue 2. Now I'm just going to go back to issue 1 for a second. And there was actually a couple of boxes here that told you about everyone. Again, the woman in blue is Atomic X. Her little caption here was, the faster her heart beats, the stronger she gets, the more trouble you're going to be in. Like her father before her, she's a hero for a new age, Atomic X. Dreamscape they have, and again, Dreamscape, she's in purple down below there. Okay. The horror of nightmares vanquished. The power of dreams made real. Okay, so that's her little description. The gentleman in the yellow feather says with his ability to alter his own gravitational weight, he's as heavy as a 18-wheel truck or as light as a feather, and feather is his name. I didn't see one of those descriptions for Galvanic. Perhaps it was in here and I just don't recall where. But Galvanic or Galvanic. I'm gonna go with Galvanic. Let's just go with that, so I don't keep going back and forth. Is that metallic dude up there? So he seems strong and somewhat indestructible, or at least nigh invulnerable, as we might say in the indie world, thanks to the tick. Oh, and D there, I know there was a description of him as well. Let me just see where we got that. Because I think his, oh, nope, that's actually in, I think that's actually in number 2. See, D is in the background of this cover. Yeah, there it is. That's like he has some boss that's kind of sending them on the mission that brought D with him. And he says D here is the most powerful telepath on the planet. So, as such, he displays a variety of abilities. I'll show you here a little bit of non-spoily interior art. It is a black and white book, but I do like the art style. There's the Atomic X character description. I do like the art style. I think the lettering is well done as well. Do like the colors on the cover, which at least, in a black and white book, it's nice to have a color cover so you can kind of get the color guide as to what the characters would look like in color. This is basically a 3-issue arc that starts you out and showcases their abilities. Again, presents a good enough threat that takes the whole team to rise to that type of challenge. And, with a 3-issue arc, they did something that is, I think, very good in the indie world, is to have a story with a beginning, middle, and end. I think this whole constantly serializing with the next thread on the last page kind of never gives the readers a resolution. So I think they did a good job in that, and they stuck with it and completed that 3-issue run, even though there are 4 issues, so they already started the next story. But again, sometimes giving indie comics a bad name, you'll have these titles that might give you 1 issue, end with a cliffhanger, and then they run out of steam. Which kind of gives a black eye to all the indie creators out there. Always good to follow through, at least through a 3-issue story arc, which they did. Now they're on to issue 4. Okay, and I like the characters. The characters are well done. I think Feather and Atomic X right now, they've showed a bit more of, and well, they've showed everyone somewhat equally, except for Feather. He's kind of like the team leader, and in issue 4 he did get a little bit more of a spotlight, so they rounded him out a little bit more. But yeah, Feather and Atomic X I really like, and Galvanic is pretty cool. See here on the cover of issue 1, he kind of has like a almost like a plaid shirt, which didn't show up in the book. But, you know, I mean, uh, people put on clothes, take off clothes, change their clothes. So I never really am too finicky with that. Um, as you can see in cover of the second issue, Galvanic doesn't have anything on like that. And could have been a design choice to drop the shirt after they had made the cover. Here's the villain. He spotlights the cover of issue 3. Again, that's the All New Union, issue 3. And then, as I said, issue 4 kind of spotlights Feather a bit. Okay. Oops. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, started off a new storyline, and I think they did a good job in wrapping up the first one. Let's see, and I like this cover. I think it's a cool pose, and that's a pretty cool character design. Let me just, while you're looking at that, should give credit to, okay, for number 1, we had Tom Pescatore. I think the creators pretty much stayed stable throughout this series, which is good. Tom Pescatore for the script, Lathe for art and ink. It says Mike Wood's colors, so I'm assuming that's for the covers. It says Miss Lemon finishing, which I'm not sure exactly what that meant. And Joe Dowick, interior design. So yeah, I mean, again, that was issue 1, and I believe in looking at number 4, gonna have the same. As a, let's see. By issue 4, I mean the writing and the art is always Tom Pescatore and Lathe. By issue 4, we got Arnim Gushite for inks, Gus Mendez for colors, Tom McKnight interiors. Interiors, okay. Letters maybe? Not sure. Or maybe he did the tonal work. Gus Mendez did colors, so maybe that's the tonal work. Because there are tones. There's some gray tones in issue. Give you a look at that. Gray tones here. So that gives you an idea about the Union. And again, the all new Union, I should say. Well, there was the book does kind of have some basis in the fact that I think I did mention that there hadn't been any metahumans in quite some time. And I guess it was the original Union, which gets hinted at in the Union and in the Fancy Men. So I believe a couple of Fancy Men might have been in the original Union, which is pretty cool to make it a legacy type of team. That works well. And like I said, I really enjoyed the Union. I had issue 1 to try it out, and by the fact that I came back for the other 3, that tells you something right there. Now you get to see the Fancy Men. Okay. I know. Okay. Here they have, okay, their names. This is issue 1. So that's always good to do. Have some illustration or something in the front cover where you could just kind of, okay, this guy's, you know, actually, Union did that in issue 2. They just kind of gave you the team and their names. So indie comics, always good to do. People aren't familiar with the characters, kind of spell it out for them. Okay, so Spirit is the woman over there. The Flare is that gentleman in the middle. The Spite and the Mane. So Spirit, she seems to be somewhat of a spirit. And the Flare, I believe he had some heat powers. Spite is super strong. And the Mane, okay, which at first might be a little hard to decipher what's going on, but I guess he's kind of like, and I don't usually like to bring up any other characters, but for explanation purposes, I'll say that he's kind of like Medusa, but utilizing his body hair, and I'm guessing those might be coming from his armpits there, utilizing his body hair rather than hair on his head, because I guess he's a bit balding there. So, and as I said, the Flare, I believe, was in the original Union. Well, on a side note, I mean, the indie comic market is tough. A lot of names have already been taken. I like that Spite name. I think that was a good one. Let's see. What was I going to say? Well, here they all are in action. And this again giving you a little look at the interior art. I think the interior art is done well. I liked it. Okay, now Joe Dowick was the writer on this. I believe we had him in the credits of the Union there. Jim Stafford did most of everything else. Illustrator, colorer, letterer. Again, colorer, I'm guessing being the tones, maybe the cover colors. Cover design, logo design, all around good dude. That was Jim Stafford. Ed Wright, interior design. They have the interior design credits on both books, so I can't be sure exactly what that is. Here's the Flare using some of his heat powers there. So I thought I like this creativity with this fight panel, all these little panels showing the fight. I did think that there's some good, in that respect, some good storytelling. There was a good setup of their antagonist as well. Okay. What were they called again? Redux. Okay. So Redux is kind of disguising itself as a club that people throughout the country are kind of joining, kind of just like a movement they're almost disguising themselves as. But they're more of a terrorist organization, so they fall out of favor with the public. but apparently they are still working underground, and in Fancyman #1, they kind of reappear as a threat. And I thought they were handled very well. I did like them as a counter to the Fancymen. Fancymen's actually kind of like a pretty good name as well, because they're kind of, since they are, I think this takes place, yeah, 99. So whereas 1999, the union's taking place in current time, this is taking place in 1999. So the Fancyman does kind of harken back to give you kind of like a throwback feel with a name like the Fancyman. Okay. And this is kind of like the Redux, I believe that's the Redux leader. And on the cover of issue 2, he's obviously showing some dimensional powers. Let's see, we may have a different artist on this one. Francesco Scoverici. Okay, so colored by Mike Woods and letters by Tom McKnight. Let me just see, is Tom McKnight the one they said? No, he's not in the other one. Jim Stafford. Let's see, isn't he in both of these? No. All right. The letters by Tom McKnight. He's involved in the union, I believe. So, but this is let's see. Well, it is a different interior artist. So let me show you his style. And I think it was, whoops, good transition. Might have actually preferred his art a little bit. Just, well, they're about, yeah, maybe a little bit more. He's, well, I think the issue 1, again, was very creative in their layouts. Perhaps more of a Michael Avon Omeg style, where this style, trying to think who I would, maybe this style goes a little bit more towards like a Mitch Bird, whose work I really enjoy. So they do a good job, as I said, in the writing and in the art, lettering as well. So, yeah, overall, I did enjoy the Fancyman as well. Which brings us to our third book. John Sloan is Mr. Disaster. Okay, so this is their newest release, June of last year. Words, Tom McKnight. So, okay, we're seeing some of the same names here. I think he did the lettering in the last book. Now he's doing the writing in this one. So we got, oh, let's do that. Okay, words, Tom McKnight. Art, Dirk Grob. Edits, Lori the Eye McCrae. So I guess she's the editor because she is the eye and can spot stuff. So you can see that is Mr. Disaster right there. And while you're looking at that, I'll read the inside cover, which says, John Sloan, aka Mr. Disaster, was an employee of the mayor of Paradise City, Sid Ahum, until he was betrayed and became the subject of countless science experiments. The results of these experiments turned Sloan into the first ever artificially created metahuman. He eventually escaped from captivity with the help of his friends Braun Rodman, an ex-engineer for the mayor, and Pat Mikowski, Sloane's partner, who died in the process. Now Sloane is a fugitive, metahuman, in a city where it is illegal to be a metahuman, and he has only one thing left on his mind: revenge. Sort of. All right, so as I said, Dirk Grob doing the art here, and the art is very well done. There he is saying that he's John Sloane. Okay. Again, a little more tonal work in this book than the others. Again, just taking a look at the art. Okay, this might be perhaps the most polished art style of the books. Basically, I know he has superpowers, but let's see. For the most part, he seems to be somewhat in the vein of like James Bond, where he's just fighting and kind of making use of the environment around him in going after his opponent. Actually, there's a little fight scene right there. And again, in my mind, when I'm thinking of James Bond, and then I'm thinking of like Jaws from Roger Moore's Moonraker and other films. So I enjoyed those films. I enjoyed this book. Again, the lettering nicely done as well. Let's see. Well, it kind of sets up what's going on, and it does give you again, and they're tying these books together to mention. See, there's Metagang New Union. So they mention the New Union in this book. They are keeping it as a cohesive universe, which is a good thing. In case they ever want to do some type of crossover event, they've already established that everything's in the same universe. Let's actually see Tom McKnight's autograph on this particular issue. So, just seeing here, reminding myself how it ended. Yeah, well, obviously they left it open for a little more story to tell there. And it says to be continued. So, again, this isn't like more of the traditional, actually the Fancy Men weren't either of your spandex-clad superhumans, which, I don't know, I'm old-fashioned, so perhaps I'm sometimes partial to that. So, of the three titles, I'd probably say The All New Union was my favorite. And, Fancy Men I enjoyed as well. Let me see if there was, just want to swing back to the Fancy Men real quick, because I thought there was a description perhaps. Yeah. So I was talking about how it's a cohesive universe. So now, in that respect, okay. In 1999, the Flare and the Dodger, so they were founding members of the original Union, okay, the world's first crime-fighting metahuman team. So in 99, they faced down Prime, the leader of Redux, which was an anti-meta religious zealots. and failed to stop his Negaton bomb, leaving a gaping hole in the middle of New York City. The flare was left alone and hopeless, standing before his failure. Redux disbanded, leaving only small clandestine cults to carry on their legacy of hate. Okay, so we had the Flare and the Dodger, which were part of Union. Then after that disaster, I guess maybe Dodger didn't make it. I'd have to refresh myself, but I think that's how it went down. And I think I recall Flare being a bit distraught about that. Okay, so 1 year later, as the Flare had gathered the few remaining metas that were willing to stand by his side, so too had Redux gathered its strength with a legion of battle-ready androids. So this is kind of like a recap of issue 1 that's on the inside cover of issue 2. After their brutal display of force on the streets of Boston, the Flare and his fancy men arrived on the scene. The ensuing battle left the city reeling and left the fancy men with one troubling question: who raised the Redux android army? So, okay, we got a timeline here where in 99, well, actually, yeah, that now that I mention it, that fancy men, when I said this was in 1999, that's kind of like a, okay, so this was 99 where the disaster occurred, but it's 1 year later where we pick it up with the fancy men. So this is actually 2000. So the timeline would be the original Union ending in 99 with the disaster. Then you have the fancy men showing up, and we don't really know exactly when or if the fancy men meet their end or disband before the all-new Union gets going. But we do know, I believe, let me just check, make sure there's nothing on issue 1 stating that this is a different year. Nope, this is the present, it says. So the Union is the present. Okay? So, again, they'll probably fill it out so that we'll know what happens within the 17 years between 99 with the fancy men and, well, let me just see here. The Union number 1, 2014. So the 14 years in between the fancy men and the Union. So that leaves them a lot of space to tell a lot of stories and fill out a history. And like I said, they're keeping things cohesive, doing a good job with that. Overall, I will recommend, and I'll get the little logo up there as well, I will recommend the Junction City Comics. The triple threat of art, writing, and lettering. And I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from here. Again, especially with this all-new Union. So, that's going to do it for our Junction City Spotlight. Feel free to ask questions in the comments below if you have any. And perhaps I can even try to get in contact with them and see if they have answers for those, or turn them onto this video so maybe they'll answer them. But that's going to do it. Keep coming back to Comic Frontline for all your comics news, reviews, and entertainment. Thanks a lot.